Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Brendan and welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new here, it's great to have you. And today we're going to be doing another Bitcoin technical analysis. And man, do we have a lot to talk about today. The world of cryptocurrency right now is crazy and there is just so much happening on the chart that we have to talk about. I was talking to some of the guys in my Discord over the past couple days and they were talking about why they're bearish for this reason or why they're bullish for another reason. And there is just a lot happening on the chart that I want to break down. And most importantly, we're going to be talking about what is possible and what is probable to happen to Bitcoin in the immediate time frame, the little bit of a distant time frame, and of course the long-term trend of what's going to happen in the years to come, in my opinion. So in order to do that properly, I think that what we're going to have to do is look at this on a 4-hour time scale, a 1-day time scale, and then the 1-month time scale. So let's go ahead and dive on into this because again, there is so much information to talk about what is, I guess, holding in the future of Bitcoin. So first things first, we're going to start this off on the smallest time scale that we're going to be looking at today, and that's the 4-hour chart. So looking at this immediately, what we can see if we just zoom out a little bit is that Bitcoin did have this ultimate higher swing low, which we'll show again on the daily, and I've talked about this a lot. But you know, over the course of about a year and a half, Bitcoin did have this higher macro swing low. But what this was actually able to set on us, that what we're able to see on this 4-hour trend, is that we actually have a pretty nice trend line that we've been using back since the about the mid time of March over here. So if you guys see this one and how it's lined up, we've bounced off of this a lot. Now there was a bit of a gap between May and July where we didn't see too much action happening on this trend line. We're actually seeing a pretty good level of volatility towards the upside from when we were bouncing. So we touched this 1, 2, 3, 4 times, took a little break in here, and then now we're coming back, touching it again, 1, 2, and now 3 again. What we are seeing is that a secondary support line is forming on Bitcoin over in here. And this actually bounced very beautifully off of the 200 EMA on this 4-hour time scale. We can see that this golden cross happened. It was fighting for it, confirmed it, reversed that death cross, and then we saw that this golden cross brought a lot of positive momentum into Bitcoin. Now we bounced off of this, we bounced off of it again, and we're seeing it as a level of support / resistance for a while now. But what we have is the secondary form of support showing Bitcoin that it's going to bounce off of here, and that has another level to hold this area. So we have our first touch point, we have our second, we have our third, and we're just a little bit above it now, and we can see that there is a great squeeze happening on Bitcoin for the time being. That being said, there is a level of resistance that has been working very consistently over the past about a month or so. And you know, since the double top of Bitcoin at this $10,500 area, we've seen this 1, 2, 3, now 4 levels of rejection. You know, you could even argue a 5th right in here, of where Bitcoin is just consecutively getting rejected from this area. It's showing that it wants to come down a little bit, and we can see almost this flat level of support. If we can delete this guy right out of here, we can see that there is like this level of support all in this area. So one could argue that we're actually setting up a descending triangle, which I think definitely is a good possibility. But you can't ignore that these two support lines are there. Again, the primary and then of course our secondary right in here. So with all of this, looking at this, what I see is a pennant forming no matter how you look on it. No matter how you look at this chart, there is a squeeze of, we're seeing consecutive lower swing highs and consecutive higher swing lows. So what this always means, or almost always means, is that we are forming a pennant. We are squeezing in both directions, and that these two directions are going to have this meeting point, which it looks like, you know, it really looks like we're going to have this meeting point before the end of the month. So I would say before the end of a month of July, you know, probably in the next 15 days, could be soon, could be later, you know, could be this week, could be next week. We are going to have a price eruption in Bitcoin, and that's just the way that this looks at from my perspective. We are going sideways here. We're seeing volume drop off, which again we'll look at in the chart, in the 1-day chart, but there's a massive squeeze happening on Bitcoin right now, and I'll probably make another video about this in just a couple days, because I think that we are getting ready for a major move on Bitcoin. Now, what this symbolizes to me is that this overall trend does look like it's in the upside right now. The overall macro, if we want to go ahead and switch this over, the macro of this chart looks like it is bullish, in my opinion. We had this higher swing low. Bitcoin has just consistently for its entire existence had these macro higher swing lows, and it looks like the trend is its friend, and that it's going to continue doing this. So when I'm looking at this chart, so we already have the drawing tool out, and we can just zoom in just a tad. this to me looks like it could be potential for just a continuation consolidation in an uptrend. So what we have is that we have here we found our bottom, we found our higher swing low, we're continuing, we double topped, saw the rejection, now we're seeing the consolidation and what looks like to be, bottom, resistance, consolidation, and then continue running. And I know that's really messy, so let me just draw that a little bit cleaner. So we have our bottom, resistance, consolidation phase, and then continue running from here. So that's, what I think is one of the most probable ways for this to play out, but I don't want to ignore too much of the bearish signs because there definitely are a little bit of this. So let's go ahead and look at this on some of the indicators and oscillators, such as the MACD. So this is one of the biggest things that I think for me is showing that there is a potential for a lot of the bulls to do movement here. So I think the bulls have a lot of potential because what we have is, again, these consistently higher swing lows from the MACD standpoint. And what this tells me is that for every attempt to the swing downside, the bulls are showing weaker and weaker momentum and less strength every time that they are trying to bring this down. So we have our first one over here since March, and then we have our second, and then our third and our fourth. You can even count this as one if you want, but this is, arguably triple, if not quadruple bullish divergence on a daily time frame. And if we even zoom out, we still have a golden cross on Bitcoin here. This is one of those times where you're saying the trend is your friend, and I am a firm believer in that. Now, we are getting a little bit into a more of a macros perspective when talking about the daily and thereon, and less of this like day trading perspective, but I want to make one thing clear, and that's we do have the golden cross. We do have the higher swing lows. For the most part, this looks like it is consolidating and holding after a beautiful bounce. And although we did not hit that higher high, we did see a great level of us bouncing 100% from our higher swing low all the way back up to 100% retracement from where we dumped from initially. And that is a big sign of strength in my opinion. So let's go and look at the RSI over here. The RSI isn't anything crazy. I think that we saw this great run up. We got into that that overbought area, and then we saw a nice sell-off. So now we're really just at this median level where, this could go down, this could go up. This isn't really showing anything. To me, what, this looks like, just from my history of working with the RSI a lot, is that this is actually squeezing, while it is squeezing towards the downside, I think that this is going to explode towards the upside. So what I mean by that is we have a lot of pressure in as we're going down, almost like a bull flag. I think that this is kind of the same principle. And again, I know this isn't a candle chart, but I think the same principle is, I don't want to say the best way to describe this, but it's the most relatable if you don't understand how to look at this on the RSI chart. The best way I can describe this to you is that it is most applicable in the sense of a bull flag. That's the easiest way I can compare these two. So let's go ahead and look at the volume over here, because this guy has been absolutely dropping off and squeezing, and we might even be able to see this better on a 3-day. We can check that real fast. Yeah, I think we definitely are. So if I can bring your eyes towards the bottom down here, what I want to highlight is that this volume has been steadily dropping off and dropping off and dropping off, and we know that when Bitcoin gets to this level of volume down in here, just for how low it is already, we are getting ready for a volatile move. We can see in the past when Bitcoin has gotten into these levels, some of the most volatile moves were to come from when Bitcoin gets down into this low level of low volume range. So that's another indicator for me that I think a big move is coming. Now, again, it's popularly debated whether this move is going to be towards the upside or the downside. You could argue that we had this double top. It's a great rejection and that we're going to come back down. And I want to talk about the area of why we can come back down and where we can come back down to. So let's go back to this 4-hour time scale again. Maybe actually what we're going to do is we're going to look at this on a 1-day. I think it'll be a little bit cleaner. So for this area and for all the bears out there that want to see Bitcoin come back down, this is for you, because Bitcoin definitely does have this area where you could argue that it's forming this, if we can highlight it, kind of this descending triangle over in here where you have this floor that looks like it's just about to drop out. And what you have is you have a big range where anywhere kind of in here, excuse me, that's way too big, anywhere I guess in here is an area where Bitcoin could easily drop to, and it wouldn't be bad, it wouldn't be bearish, it could be 100% normal, and you could see Bitcoin drop, $2,200, if not even more than that. I mean, you just have a phenomenally large range in here, all the way from 9,200 all the way down to just below even 7,000, and it wouldn't be anything crazy for Bitcoin to do, and it would play 100 and really make 100% chance, or 100. It would make complete sense, is what I'm trying to say, is if Bitcoin fell down into this range. So just be aware of that. Definitely if the floor does drop out, anywhere in this range is fair game. Of course, I would be looking at this 200 EMA around like the upper 8,700, 8,600 range area. And below that, I think if the floor drops out, this thing's going down into the lower 8,000s, possibly even the lower 7,000s. But to the upside, if you're looking at this of the macro, I know I talked about this in the last video, but if you're looking at this from a macros perspective and you're looking towards the upside, obviously you have 10.5 grand, and then you have the previous swing highs of 12 grand, and then over 13, and then obviously almost up into the 14, 15 range, and beyond that it goes straight to 17. Then I think it was like 19, and who knows, infinity and beyond after that. So that is kind of the perspective of what we're looking at in measured move standpoints to the up and to the downside here. So let's go ahead and look at this on a 1 month, because there's one thing I really want to highlight on here, and that is this MACD chart. So this MACD, if you guys don't know, this guy's rounding off on a monthly time scale. When this came down over here, we saw this double bearish divergence. We had another big dump in the price action of Bitcoin. We already saw that come out. And before that, when Bitcoin bottomed out at 3K, we saw a massive rally. And then now we're forming this double bullish divergence. Again, signifying that we are in this squeeze. But I think that with something like a monthly time scale on a MACD, this is showing me that maybe 2020. I'm talking far out here. I'm not talking this week, this month, not even probably in the coming months. I'm talking probably in like the end of 2020, possibly 2021. I think we could see a just great move for Bitcoin. I'm looking at all this bearishness dry up. I don't know how big I can zoom this in, but whatever kind of bearish momentum was on Bitcoin, it's about gone. I mean, we saw this historic level from what happened back in 2018. It came back up, had a great bounce, then came back down. There was nothing here. They brought it up, then they brought it back down again. They tried to send it back down, and it wasn't even a third of what happened in 2018. So I think that the overall bear sentiment, this bear market for Bitcoin, is just drying up for the most part. I think we are seeing the ends of it, and I think it is definitely reaching the end of its life. So this is what the monthly chart looks like for Bitcoin. Of course, the squeeze is fairly obvious. The trend is your friend. We now have our 50 EMA on the monthly chart, again looking like it is still incredibly pointing upwards, and that's what we're looking at right now. So that is the video, guys. Take that with what you will. Again, I'm not a legal, financial, or tax advisor in any way for your investments, but I do want to talk about and just kind of highlight what's going through my head when I'm looking at this Bitcoin chart, because I think Bitcoin is going to have a prominent part of the future. That doesn't mean it can't go down. That doesn't mean that it has to go up for every day in between, but I want to talk about, I guess, this so that the day traders can see what's going through my head, and these long-term holders can also see what's going through my head, potentially, so that if, or I guess how I'm going to act and react. If the chart does this, I'm going to react this way, and if the chart moves this way, I'm able to react this way. So that's, I guess, how my mind works when I'm going through this chart. I'm creating what I think is going to happen, and then I am explaining what I'm going to do or what's going to go through my head if something else does happen. So if I am bullish and it does break down bearishly, then I already have my pre-made mind set up saying, all right, these are my bear targets. This is where I think it's going to go to. Here, there, and everywhere. So hopefully that was to help, or it was a lot of help, guys. If that was insightful, I definitely would appreciate a like on this video and a subscribe. If you really liked it, share it with a friend. And if you guys want to join our Discord community, I will leave a link to that in the description down below. I'll flash that up on the screen right now, and you guys can see if that's something that interests you. It's completely free, no strings attached, just kind of where my community resides, and we talk about trading and charts and everything that is economics related. So once again, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.